Welcome back to the Pharma Forum podcast. In this episode, I speak with Dr. Gen Li, founder and president of Phesi, a follow-up conversation to a discussion held quite some time before, but on subjects yet relevant and indeed even more so given recent events. Exploring how data science and AI technologies can assist in clinical trial design and drug development, it becomes clear that operations are still progressing as a result of a shift in functions necessary during the COVID-19 pandemic. We also look to the future of digital simulation and digital control arms and the potential for scale-up, as well as considerations and complications at regional and national levels, and the challenges of moving between those. As ever, thank you for listening. This is your host, Nicole Raleigh, and today I have with me Dr. Gen Li, founder and president of Phesi, a company that provides comprehensive clinical development analytical products and services for biopharmaceutical companies around the world, covering the entire clinical development process, from development planning and indication assessment to protocol evaluation, site selection, and trial implementation management. Welcome, Gen.
Thank you, Nicole.
Now, today we'll be discussing clinical trials, their design and location, as well as their simulation and most recent key foci. But before we begin, Gen, perhaps you could share with listeners and myself a little about your own journey, your path to what you do today with Phesi.
Thank you again. The journey from Phesi is actually in the name of our company. Phesi is the abbreviated format of pharmaceutical pipeline enhancement strategies. Where it comes from is actually my experience when working with BMS and being an industry leader in the feasibility analysis at that time with my colleagues from other companies in the industry. It's pretty frustrating that we're going through a cycle again and again, is that when we're pushing a new drug in the market, then we started to developing new drugs to at some point to replace the new drug because there is a patent life. But we more often than not failed to having the backup drugs to be in the marketplace and in time when the existing drug fell off the patent. So that's quite a chaotic kind of transition happening repeatedly in the industry. We just genuinely felt that using data science, we should be able to improve that situation. We are not entirely there yet, but we have very strong confidence we are making very good progress towards that goal.
Thank you. So is your background specifically in data science, Gen?
That's interesting. I'm not being actually educated as a data science person per se. I have my PhD in chemistry, worked in biomedical research for a number of years. My last job in academic was at the Cornell Medical School. So at that point, I went to business school to get my MBA from Cornell. So those are the things prepared me well towards the path in data science. The fascination, of course, is my earlier experience in Bristol Myers Squibb, where I was leading strategic planning group team there, to looking at a variety of different elements from finance to resource planning to portfolio planning, and giving me very good foundation in preparing myself to be in a data science setting.
Thank you. So actually, you and I have spoken before.
Yes.
We spoke last year in the spring of 2023, and we discussed the situation around clinical trials in Ukraine and Russia, with a steady fall in the number of recruiting clinical sites being seen in both countries due to the war. When we spoke then, we noted that the enormous challenges of such an environment, including access to and care of the patient, supply issues, and a deteriorating regulatory environment, were not ideal for clinical sites. A primary example evidenced by Phesi's risk report of the time, was that a considerably high number of sites in those countries were in clinical development of psychiatric drugs.
Yes.
And what would originally have taken 10 months to enroll a certain number of patients needed to be more like 15 months or longer. Indeed, one major complication that we spoke of was relocating sites to other regions, other countries.
Mm-hmm.
And the impact of war on community development is so much more than a regional or temporary matter.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the war in Ukraine is yet ongoing, and we don't have to make explicit the present situation with Israel and Palestine, but perhaps you could take up for listeners the thread of that conversation again, and perhaps provide thoughts on the wider impact of geopolitical events on clinical development.
So, yeah, the positive message come out from this, and there are other messages are pretty instructive for us to prepare our own future from the lessons learned in those events. So one of the things we actually did a follow-up analysis on the war impact of the clinical trial industry in Ukraine and in Russia. So I was absolutely positively surprised by the level of resilience of our own colleagues in that country still actually maintained a level of clinical trial activities in that country. So then going to a larger of the geographic events is that the industry is not very good in proactively preparing and planning for some of those things happening down the road. We are reasonably better in reactive to some of those things. So we have heard in my own personal interaction with some of the clients that some of the indications like antipsychotic drug development was actually hurt pretty badly because of the war in Ukraine, and so, but we are able to actually overcome that. So the situation in a much larger, like the COVID-19, actually stimulated some of the technologies were actually existing before, like decentralized clinical trials, like etc. So I just, currently we're being presented with a set of very good opportunity because of the technology advancement. So, which is the big data with artificial intelligence, and which allow us, for example, in our situation at Phesi, our colleagues in different companies are all making similar efforts. In our situation, we have collected the data from over 100 million patients around the world. So that gave us the level of the freedom and present for opportunities to proactively plan and prepare some of those events. Even without, we should be able to still deal using this kind of technology platform to deal with some evergreen challenges, for example, the enrollment challenges and the large number of protocol amendments happening in our industry.
Okay, thank you for that. So if we shift our focus slightly to what could be more correctly termed a biological war, that is to say the war on, for example, cancer. Phesi recently released its annual global analysis of all clinical trials in 2023, revealing that breast cancer was the most studied disease area for the third year running. Indeed, an analysis of 65,749 trials found that solid tumours came second, followed by stroke, COVID-19 and prostate cancer. What was interesting, though, was that 2023 saw a high rate of phase 2 trial cancellations at some 28%. So I was wondering if you could comment on those findings, including the phase 2 trial attrition rate, and also maybe provide details on the work that Phesi is doing in the oncological arena and the role that AI is playing in that work.
So the industry, the phase 2 attrition rate pre-COVID-19 2020, it's pretty stable around like 20%. And since the 2020, the COVID-19 impacted the development, so the negative impact was not actually immediate. You're actually seeing in 2020 and 2021 we're still, it's increased, but increased it was a limited amount. And but by 2022, that actually reached a peak almost to 30% of the attrition. That's pretty alarming because from the industry point of view, and the phase 2 is the vital link for the innovative drugs to go into market. So we were actually really concerned to see that kind of jump of the attrition rate. So to the level of the comfort, and to last year, 2023, it actually reduced to 28. So we are expecting that attrition going to come down further this year, but very unlikely that we'll be able to go down to 20%. So that's a trend we're seeing from this data. At the same time, just imagine when you have that kind of 28% of the attrition, 30% of attrition, which means you still have another batch of those phase 2 barely made that bar. And those are the trials going to be further progressing to phase 3. So introducing quality problems into the phase 3. As the time goes by, then that portion of the phase 3 trials will fail. So the pandemic may be behind us, but the impact is going to last for a little while. The industry, the leaders of our industry need to be prepared for that kind of situation. And we should actually take advantage of the technical advancement to minimize and reduce the impact from the COVID-19 on an ongoing basis.
Thank you. So if we think about this technological advancement and we sort of backtrack a little bit to the role of that technology in DCTs, or decentralized clinical trials, and I'd like to also perhaps discuss simulation when it comes to clinical trials. Could you tell us more about these advancements that perhaps circumvent these challenges you've just been mentioning?
Yeah, actually, that's a very important advancement, both from the Phesi perspective and also from the industry perspective, is that with that data from 100 million patients, and which is global data, we can actually start to simulate the clinical trial from the planning to the implementation to actually projecting the results of those clinical trials. So where I meant is that we can actually digitally portray the profile of the patient we are trying to treat without starting this clinical trial, which allow us to check that kind of patient profile against the design of the protocols. It has been repeatedly working for us that will reveal very significant disparity between the design, which is a theoretical picture, and the reality of the patient from the data being provided by that. So from that one, we can actually start to digitally simulate the patient we are going to recruit before we recruit them at the baseline, called baseline patient characteristics. That will have actually statistical significance, resembles the patient we will be recruited down the road. And with that one, we can further project if they were being treated by a placebo or being treated by a known active comparator, how the safety and efficacy outcome may look like. That is the digital twin. If we can actually get the FDA or EMA and other regulatory agencies to be part of that, and at the end, we will be able to use a digital trial arm to replace a portion of the clinical trial arm. So that is the continuous kind of progressing way we can actually managing this process quite confidently. And we are at the different stages in working with our clients in doing that.
Thank you. Brilliant. So thinking about those different stages, what of 2024 and more importantly, beyond? What next, firstly, for Phesi, and secondly, for clinical trials generally and indeed globally?
So it is more of we have been seeing from our data, we have been convinced that the technology is there, the data is there, but we are seeing the hurdles more from the human ourselves. So that is the kind of mind setting we have not been able to comprehend the volume, the diversity, and the dynamic of those data can actually be used impacting the way we conducting clinical trials and clinical development. So we are hoping through this kind of conversation with you to reach our audience and working with our clients and using many other ways and means, we will be able to get the people to better informed to take the advantage and advancement from what we already have.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for your time to take in. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you very much, Nico, for the opportunity to talk to you.
And so that concludes another episode of the Pharma Forum podcast. You can find out more information about this episode, including a download link and information about previous installments of the series at pharmaforum.com/podcasts. The Pharma Forum podcast is also available on iTunes, Spotify, Acast, Stitcher, and Podbean, where you can find and subscribe by searching for Pharma Forum. Of course, don't forget to visit our website itself, where you can sign up for daily news and analysis bulletins, and follow us on Twitter, or X nowadays, at PharmaForum. That's all for now. Thank you for listening.